All right, here in my backyard doing another one of these YouTube videos. Appreciate those of you that are taking a look at these and care about investing and buying your first rental property. I know it's difficult. Trust me, the first one's the toughest one, and then it's rinse and repeat after that. So what we're going to talk about today is what to look for when it comes down to down payment on a rental property. So living in an expensive market, I live in San Diego. Home prices have appreciated so much that it's hard to rent out a property and cash flow. So San Diego is a great place to hit a home run on equity buildup. So the numbers don't really make sense from a cash on cash return. And I like to buy property not speculating that the property is going to go up in value. That's kind of the cherry on top. I like to buy the property based on cash flow. I'm a long-term investor, 10, 20, 30 years. I want to leave something behind for kids, grandkids, right? I want to build something that's a huge engine to leave behind for really forever. So I like these markets where you can buy a rental property for 100,000, 150, 200,000, and you can rent it out for 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 because you have great cash flow. And if the property appreciates 3, 4, 5% over time, then it's going to be the cherry on top. So I like properties that have 3-bed, 2-bath, 3-bed, 1-bath, 4-bed, 2-bath, something that I would live in, a property that I would rent out if I lived in these markets. So I like to look at Florida. We're going to stick to Florida here. So Florida is a good market to purchase. It still meets the 1% rule. So when you buy a property, let's say you buy a property for 150,000, you want to get a conventional loan. So reach out to a mortgage lender. They have to be licensed in that area. So if you live in California and you want to buy a property in Florida, if you know a mortgage broker, or you can call up mortgage brokers in Florida, they have to be licensed, okay? There's not too many differences between mortgage brokers, to be honest with you. You can shop around for different interest rates. But it's kind of like a real estate agent. Everybody knows a real estate agent these days. Everybody knows, everyone's a mortgage broker, especially young. I feel like it's kind of a field where there's a lot of people that are mortgage brokers these days to start their career. So you want to make sure they're licensed in Florida. That's the first thing. And they'll tell you if they're licensed or not. The second thing you're going to have to do is get pre-approved for buying a property. So they're going to look at your income. They're going to look at your W-2 income to buy a property out in Florida. So it's pretty easy to apply to buy a property that's 150 to 200,000. You don't have to really making that much money to purchase. So it's going to be it's called an conventional loan. So the bank's going to want you to put about 20% down to buy these properties. So, if you buy a property for 150,000, you're gonna have to put 20% down. So whatever that figure is, I'm not good at math. And then you're gonna need an extra 3 to 4% for what's called closing costs. So this is kind of just pay to play. There's a lot of moving parts. There's title, escrow, attorney fees. This 3 to 4% of the total purchase price, so that 150,000, it's basically going to be money that you just have to pay other people. It's not going towards the equity of the house. So 20% of the 150, that's going towards the equity of the house. But the other 3% is just, like I said, pay to play. There's no better way to explain it. So once you get approved, you can go shopping for property. Now, a lot of people look for the property first. I like to go look for the property management company first because they can help you determine the neighborhoods to stay out of, neighborhoods that are good, what the property is going to rent for. But also to backtrack, one thing I forgot for lending, the bank's also going to look to make sure you have reserves. So this is just an overall good thing to have. You don't want to have just enough and be left with $1,000 in your bank account once you get the loan, just in case anything comes up. But the bank's going to definitely make sure of that. So there's it's a lot stricter lending requirements these days than there were back in 2005, 6, 7. But the lender's going to basically be your partner. They're going to make sure that you can pay the mortgage, or that the property is going to be cash flowing every single month. Sometimes lenders require the property to be occupied with a tenant versus not occupied. If you're buying your first rental property, obviously it's going to be a risk to buy a property that's vacant, right? So if you buy a property from retail, 3-bed, 2-bath, someone's lived in it for the past 20 years and they're ready to sell, you can buy it, but then you're going to have to wait a little bit to get a tenant in, which means that we're on the hook as the landlord to pay the mortgage. So sometimes it's better to buy it. It really just depends if you have the money. I mean, it's not that big of an issue, you know. Sometimes these properties, when you put them on the rental market, they're going to sit for a month or 2 months, and your mortgage is, you know, $1,000, let's say, or $900. That means it's out of pocket. So you're out of pocket $1,800. Which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter, but that's the risk. That's the risk we take as buying these assets. So you're gonna want to, there's two ways to look at it, right? If you wanna reduce that risk, you can buy a property that already has a tenant in it. So if you buy a property from a tenant, someone has already a tenant in it, you really have to ask the question, why is this investor selling it? Because I'm not a fan of selling properties. The only reason why I would sell a property is because I've built up equity, and that's just dead money. It's called dead money. So if you buy a property for $100,000 and you rent it out for $1,000, and that property appreciates to $200,000, now your return on equity is really low. So instead of keeping that property, sometimes people will do a 1031 exchange and sell that property to capture that equity to go roll it into a bigger deal. So if you're looking at a property and you're gonna buy from an investor, you really wanna understand, okay, why are they selling it, right? Is it a problem? Is it a problem child? Is it a problem asset? Is it have maintenance cost? Is there a problem tenant? So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Where if you buy a property from a retail, someone who's lived in the property, maybe they just want to move to somewhere else, right? There's not an issue with the property, they just want to move. So that's one way to look at it. The other way is if you buy a property from a investor, like I said, you want to make sure why, because either they're exiting that property because they have built up equity, they want to keep that money moving, or it's a problem child property. And the way to determine is it a problem child property is you do T12, you know, trailing 12. I like to look at sometimes 18 months to see the expenses. So the investor, before you place an offer on a property, ask your agent to give the rent roll to see, is that tenant paying on time? Is there any back payment that they owe? And also maintenance. What's the rent roll look like? What's the maintenance? Are they self-managing it? Do they have another property management company? Sometimes investors are brand new and they'll try to self-manage a property. And those are sometimes the best deals, because you can pick up a property where they just try to buy a property and self-manage it, and it's just a headache for them and they don't want to do it. So that's why I always consider a property management company. So just figure out why, you know, how, what, where, when, and why. You know, those are the questions I like to ask. You know, just be curious about why someone is selling a property. So we'll keep going. I'm just gonna keep spitting out advice. There's no real structure to these videos. It's just me in my backyard going over a few things. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or subscribe. I think that's how it works, or like, and I'll keep making these videos. Appreciate y'all.